There are moments that become tipping points. But once in a while, you see it happening live, like you're watching a movie.
It's time to experience the built world.
The structures that humans create define us. They define a destination, they define a culture, they define what we're capable of achieving. All of the above. There's an inherent human aspiration to reach upward. There's a natural human faith in striving for what's out of reach. And humans reach for the clouds. That's why we have Supertalls today. It's because of that aspiration, that inherent human aspiration to push the envelope and see how high we can soar.
We got to go to the Empire State Building. Yes. We spent a lot of time at the Empire State Building. So when you think about this kind of amazing responsibility of building and managing a Supertall, you have to consider that today we have the luxury of a lot of really amazing technology. If you circle back, all the way back to when the Empire State Building was being built in the 30s, you had none of that.
And yet they managed to build at least 100 floors in a year and 45 days with 10 million hand-laid bricks. Fast forward almost 100 years later, and the building in all its beauty is still there, is still iconic.
And what they've done is they've upgraded the Empire State Building in such a way that they've been able to cut 40% of the energy out of that building over the last 10 years. That equals more than $4 million annually. There was no one thing that got them that 40%. That was a series of small cuts rather than one silver bullet.
Good morning. Thanks for coming to the Empire State Building.
Yeah, we are so happy to be here.
Well, terrific. You get to be here before we open, so we have the place to ourselves, which is pretty special.
I have been working with Tony Malkin since 2007. And at the time I was working at JLL and I was managing director of energy and sustainability projects there. So this was perfect for opportunity to work on a project like this when it came up.
When the Clinton Climate Initiative came in, and Ira Magaziner said he wanted to use the Empire State Building as a model for energy efficiency retrofits in the existing built environment, we offered him a different building, and he rather gruffly said if we were successful in that building, it wouldn't achieve a great deal of notice. He said that he wanted to work with the Empire State Building, which would get people's attention.
And the idea was that we would use the Empire State Building as a laboratory to test the theory that it was economically viable to do a deep energy retrofit. Our mission was to figure out how do you make a great payback case for investing in making an existing building super energy efficient. Everything a building has to do to be beautiful and clean and comfortable can be done in a way that's environmentally responsible.
You have to use recycled content carpet. You're not allowed to use any new off-gassing inorganics, low to zero off-gassing paints, adhesives, and wall coverings. We have lighting innovations that we've put in throughout the entire building where any space within 15% of a perimeter wall where there's a window is auto dimming, and all spaces have infrared and motion detector sensors. So we really try to focus on all aspects of the sustainability, healthy workplace, and energy efficiency profile out there in the world.
If if the 20% largest buildings in New York replicated what we've already done and reduced energy use 40%, the energy use of New York City would be reduced by 25%.
I like challenges, I like figuring things out. And I think that in the end, when it comes to the environment, I realized a few years ago that my greatest contribution will be from the efforts that I have made, not only to partner with really smart people to come up with solutions about how to tackle issues of energy efficiency, sustainability, and healthy buildings in the existing built environment, but also to make this information available to others and to guide policy on a local, on a state, and on a federal level with that knowledge. Success is shared by everybody. I'm not a believer that failure is an orphan. Everybody shares a role in that too. But we've got a great team who works together, and we try to innovate every day.
The pressure's on, of course. You have to succeed. We have no room for failure. So we're now working on a plan for carbon neutrality at the Empire State Building. And what does that look like?
Good morning. Welcome to the Empire State Building Observatory. My name is Jean-Yves Ghazi. I am the president of the Empire State Building Observatory.
Tell us about a little bit of the transformation, because this is a whole new Empire State experience.
We went through this planning of this transformation since 2014 is when we first started thinking about the redo, the reimagining of the Empire State Building experience. We know from our polling that visitors that have come to the Empire State Building have come and they had already planned to visit the Empire State Building before leaving their country. So from all over the world, as a global icon, there's magic that takes place here at the Empire State Building Observatory. We also learned that they wanted to become insiders but not experts. So they wanted to connect with the building in a unique way. So we told the story of the building from the moment it was conceived to its place today in pop culture.
Oh, okay.
So each of the exhibits that you will experience, over 10,000 square feet of a museum that celebrates the building, you'll understand some of the history about the construction, what made it so possible that the building was built in such amazing speed, the fact that the steel was erected at a pace of 4 stories per week. And the demand for steel was so strong that the manufacturer's steel was arriving on site or still warm to the touch. A very common question that visitors ask us is, what's between the 2nd floor and the 86th floor?
That's a great question.
Most visitors do not understand that we have tenants in the space. So romance is embedded into the building. It's such an international icon. So all of these come together in this particular experience to help remind our visitors of the place of the Empire State Building in pop culture globally, not just locally. And then we go into a little bit of more fun, where I'd like to think that we co-starred in the 1933 movie King Kong. Just saying. So I always worked about the hospitality and the science of creating an experience that is memorable. So to me, the biggest joy I have, if I have a bad day in the office, I'll go up to the 86th floor of the observation deck. I'll stand behind one of the columns and I'll watch the visitors take that first step out of the elevator and watch the view and watch their face. It is priceless.
Ooh, I have
They're in
chills.
absolute awe. They just stand there. And for me, that's joy. That's my motivation. It just brings me such great satisfaction. That's what I live for. That's what I do.
Buildings use 30% of all of the world's energy, and half of that goes into heating and cooling. So if you can tackle just the heating and cooling in a building, you'll probably actually save more than 6% of the world's energy use.
We build super tall buildings, we build with lots of windows. Windows are good for us, we like it, but they come with some challenges when the sun is out. So the way we handle that from a technology standpoint was we just put in blinds to deal with the glare and heat that came along with it. The science name is called electrochromic glass. The idea has kind of been around almost 50 years. And over the last 12 years of our journey, we invented something that is now called dynamic glass in the market. And it's basically transition lenses, but for windows. We still know natural light is better for our bodies and our brains, right? I think we're all kind of craving that in this, as we're all stuck on Zoom calls all day, right? So we're trying to be healthier, and this is a way you can be healthier and just help the occupants of building.
But I think the coolest part, which I don't get to see because I'm not working in a place that has this glass kind of progressing with the light throughout the day, is that it's meant to be a little bit unassuming, and you go about your life, you go about working, and it's tinting throughout the day with the sun as, you know, it's meant to.
No, the best compliment we ever get is I forgot about it.
A lot of what you do, though, is rooted in sustainability and making buildings smarter, healthier, and more efficient. What are the specifics of how that plays out?
It doesn't just block glare when the glass tints, but it blocks heat. And so the heat is why we need air conditioning. So when it is that 80-degree day, 90-degree day, you pump up the air conditioning. When you're doing that, you're increasing carbon emissions. So because the air conditioning doesn't have to work as hard, is the simplest way to put it, you're using less of it. And that's reducing carbon emissions, so it's in line with lots of people's sustainability policies, lots of tenants' sustainability policies. So not only is the space healthier and more comfortable, but it's actually helping planet Earth at the same exact time.
I think we're finally starting to see it. We're finally starting to see the industry rally around things that just make sense. And we've been waiting for it and hoping and rallying and championing these things. But I think it's just a matter of time.
I agree, and they're starting to embrace technology in a way that they didn't before, right? Real estate kind of like, it took a little longer than every other industry to really embrace
we took our
technology.
time.
But now it's here, and there's no going back.
There's no going back. It's only building, and I think the momentum will continue to build. Especially during this kind of radical time of change where everybody's working differently, living differently. We need different things out of building. So Brian, the other day you took us to 1155 6th Avenue to show us the views, the glass, everything in action. But today we're at 825 3rd Avenue and you're gonna show us kind of the newest generation glass.
If we come over here, we've tinted a few of the windows just to show you the difference.
Right. Oh, you can feel the temperature change too.
Usually it's about 8 to 10 degrees cooler, almost 40 feet from the glass sometimes. In fact, you can see how deep the natural light gets in the space. It's just comfortable now. So now that glare and heat that you had over there, just a couple of windows away, completely gone. And then of course, the name of the company is View for a reason. I mean, look at this view, right? Can you imagine if you had to cover this view with blinds?
Looking out into the future, the facade of super tall buildings will allow us to do things like harness energy, connect to Wi-Fi, and even grab onto 5G.
5G is coming, right? The new iPhone has it, the new Pixel has it. But what they're not telling you is that the networks aren't ready for it. Coatings on glass really hurt it. It's making it challenging, right? Because all of a sudden you don't have a signal in buildings and you end up having to bring lots of infrastructure in just to keep your cell signal. So we're working on a really amazing solution to that where the glass essentially becomes the cell tower. We have a network that runs around the building that tints the windows. So what they're doing in here is now the window, get ready for it, will become a TV. And it's a smarter building, right? And that's what we've always.
It's not just smarter, Brian. It's like leaps and bounds. It's like building out of the Jetsons. You know, it's really, really, really super cool.
All the things that we're going to connect in our buildings or our homes are going to need power, right? And communication. So we kind of have a unique advantage because we have the network going around to tint the windows already. So we're just trying to do more things with that, and it's really getting exciting.
This is really what I think of when I think of how do you future-proof a building, right? Because I think a lot of the problem in building these amazing
skyscrapers a lot of times, these super talls, if you will, is that you start building and it takes years to finish. And by the time it's ready and ready for people, the tech stack is often obsolete. Well, it's such an incredible responsibility as building owners or developers when you're building specifically these super talls, these skyscrapers that we have in New York City. And so they need to be sustainable. They need to contribute some sort of positive contribution. Hopefully, that goal by 2050 to have net neutral for New York City real estate, we'll see how close we get, but it's an incredible responsibility that you take on in building one of these or retrofitting it with new technology. So it's incredible to see really what's possible.
It is.
Real estate began with safety. It began with, where do you seek shelter from the elements? Where do animals seek shelter? Even animals have real estate. What hole do they live in? What rock do they live under? What tree do they live in?
You took me on a really fun road trip. We went all the way up to Goshen, New York,
because there's this kind of secret life that lives here in New York City that we never really talk about.
We think because we build super talls that we occupy the highest floors in our super talls around the world. But human beings do not have the loftiest occupancy in New York City or any other city.
My name is Tom Cullen, and I'm a falconer. It's been a sport that's been around for several thousand years, and me and my family have been doing it for the last several kind of decades. If we go back even thousands of years ago to ancient Egypt, this was the bird that lived on top of the pyramids. This lanner falcon in North Africa. Now in modern times, peregrine falcons are the falcons that are native to New York City. New York City has the highest density population of peregrines in the entire world.
Really?
Wow.
All living at the tops of buildings or in the park. So if a bird chooses the top of a skyscraper for a nest, are there laws, conservation laws, that the property owner must abide by?
All birds of prey, I should say, are federally protected in the United States. As soon as that bird decides that that building is their home, that building has to, and the building managers have to start dealing with that situation. Once the bird has decided that that building is its home, it is illegal to go do anything to make that place less suitable for that bird to live.
Talk about a tenant.
Yeah.
With rights.
Some birds who have been breeding in an area for a long period of time, they might have 3 or 4 nests that they kind of switch to. And it could be only maybe 3 blocks away. Definitively, I can say the MetLife building definitely has a pair of peregrines on it. And every bridge on the Hudson and East River have peregrines on it.
So Tom, we're talking about Manhattan. So when we travel to Chicago or San Francisco or Paris or Singapore or Hong Kong, is it safe to assume, even if we can't see them, that there are birds of prey living in each one of these cities the same way?
Peregrine falcons are found all around the world. They're the most successful birds of prey on the planet. So they're found on all continents except Antarctica, and all cities are pretty much dominated by wildlife. It's just how much time people take to notice them. As we all know, being New Yorkers, there are a lot of rodents and rats in New York City, and that is a perfect prey for birds of prey, things like the owls, red-tailed hawks. The falcons, not so much. They're primarily going after the pigeons. But the red-tailed hawks and the owls specifically are going to be catching probably 80 to 90% rodents. So if we're putting a whole lot of rodenticide, a lot of the poison out to try and deal with that situation, we're just basically eliminating all the birds that are doing that job for us naturally. That we don't even have to think about it, worry about it. They're going out and taking those rodents for us. But if we continue to put tons of poison out, we're gonna remove all those birds from the environment. And by removing those birds of prey, we're gonna create a bigger problem down the road. Being better stewards of our environment and trying to encourage what naturally takes care of things, rather than trying to do it artificially or with technology or anything like that, is always gonna be the better practice. So for me, the best New York City is a New York City where the people that live there are as closely exposed to nature as possible. that nature in New York City is kind of symbiotic.